Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. Legacy of Phrecia event is coming out in 18 hours after I'm recording this video, so less than 18 by the time you're watching it. And Grinding Gear Games pushed a patch live a few hours ago that contained all of the major information about this patch. Now, this also contains the new idol mods. We'll go through those in a second, at least some of the ones that I feel are pretty interesting. And one thing that's really noticeable is that Kalguuran or supports actually do have some quite good things on the idols. So we'll come to those in a bit. But firstly, let's go through the other changes that are being made with a quick note that all of the sections related to character power balance for ascendancies, these are exactly what we expected. And so we're not going to repeat that. We covered that in previous videos. Firstly, going through the miscellaneous changes, there is a quality of life improvement to equipping MTX. So you can right click one in your cosmetics UI and that will unequip it. This is a really big improvement, even though it's a really simple one, definitely something that's better. Secondly, General's Cry. This is getting a substantial buff. This is more of a bug fix than a buff, but it is something that is going to have the impact of being a big buff to the skill. This is not going to be a buff at casual levels of investment into General's Cry. What's happening here is that a cap that was placed on by technical limitations or by the particular implementation of the skill that you would not hit unless you're a power gamer, that cap is being removed. Or at least it's being changed, and in a way that's going to be more favorable. Ultimately, all of the optimization of previous General's Cry builds is now to be thrown out and replaced by new optimization, but the new optimization will be unconditionally better than it used to be. There has been a bug fix for Ailith in Breach Hive and Hive Fortress encounters. These tend to be pretty easy once your character is really going, and as a result, this bug fix, which is likely to make those harder, is not going to be very impactful. So apparently Ailith was getting buffed by certain map modifiers. I don't actually know which ones they were because it never felt like it was super impactful. Fix a bug where Herald of Ash would deal no damage if the damage it would deal was too high. This is probably an integer overflow bug and one that would be quite funny and quite annoying, but Herald of Ash now better than it used to be if you're dealing tremendously big individual hits, which ultimately is the identity of that skill. Banners. Banners are getting a bug fix, but it's not clear whether this is a buff or a nerf to them. Tech Slam and Tech Slam of Cataclysm. These have had two bugs reported about them. The first bug is being fixed here. The first bug is that they did not seem to be increasing in area of effect as you spent endurance charges on them. The actual behavior was that they were increasing in area of effect, but that this was not communicated to the player. So the player saw the normal size slam, but the actual damaged area was the larger slam. So that was working. This is a visual fix. However, the second bug that's been reported, and I haven't been able to personally verify this myself, but the second thing that's been reported is that it was not dealing increased damage based upon the number of endurance charges spent. And this was specifically for Tech Slam of Cataclysm. Can't verify this either way, but people think it's really bad at the moment, and I'm inclined to believe them because I've heard this from people whose attitudes on this I respect. Next, fix an issue where the Safehouse progress percentage would not show when hovering over the bar. Pure quality of life interface improvement. Something that's been buggy since the Betrayal rework and definitely an improvement. Next, a sound bug that is specific to Xbox One. And after that, a really funny one. The Uber Incarnation of Neglect and the Uber Incarnation of Fear were dropping each other's reliquary keys. So that's getting fixed. They're now going to drop from the intended bosses instead. Otherwise, just a couple of crash fixes after that, and then all of the Phrecia specific changes we knew about that were to ascendancies. The big news when it comes to the ascendancies isn't the changes because we've already covered those. They were known about in advance. They've got their own videos. Those videos have already published. Instead, it is that Path of Building has been updated. So if you update the community fork of Path of Building, there's now a new option, 3.27 alternate ascendancies, and you'll then be able to copy over your tree to that, and then you'll be able to work with that. If you don't see this option of 327 alternate ascendancies, just come down and click check for update, and then Path of Building will think for a little while, and then it will download the things you're missing, and at that point, it will then restart itself, and you'll be good to go. After this, though, we have something that is significant, and this is the idle modifiers. So idol modifiers have been changed in accordance with changes that have been made to the Atlas skill tree since the last time we ran an event with idols. Added new modifiers on idols for ore deposits, specific Scarab types being more likely, and Atlas memories. Editing log here just clarifying what the Scarab changes are here. So the last time Phrecia was run, you were able to bias towards certain types of Scarabs such as Cartography, Ambush, and Titanic, but these were the ones that had increased Scarab chance close to the center of the Atlas passive tree. Mechanics that did not have those clusters there, for example Legion, they did not have comparable modifiers. Now there are Legion versions of these. In practice, this is actually going to water down the mod pool when it comes to these Kamasan idols and Noble idols, the 2x1 and 1x2. So generally speaking, this is going to make it harder to find the mods you're looking for, but there are a few new choices that might sometimes be ones you want, but I think in most cases, people would prefer the way it was before. This does provide more options, but it's going to be harder to find the specific option you're after. The next category that we want to talk about here that is new is all the things that relate to Originator content. So 3.26 changes the core game. These had not previously been reflected into the idol system. They're getting some support here. That support on 1x1 and 2x2 idols is pretty bad, but on 1x2 and 1x3 idols, it's pretty good. So firstly, 1x2 is all about memory tears. This is not memory influence, designer influence maps. These are the tears that then take you to one of the bosses. That's because the 1x2 idols are the ones that are dedicated to boss killing in general. So 10 to 20% increased chance for your maps to contain memory tears. This is believed to be 5% by default, so one of these idols that's perfectly rolled will take you up to 6%. Add a second that's almost perfectly rolled, you might be at 6.9%. Keep going and you can get quite a lot of this chance. However, of course, you then can't find another memory tear until you complete the one that you've already found. In Trade League, one of these, probably the one that has the flask, which I can never remember which one it is, one of these is going to be worth more than the others, so do keep that in mind. If you want to spec into a single one, you can, but you're probably going to need to end up recombinating idols together in order to make good ones, and that is going to come along with some risk of losing idols. Make up your own mind whether that's worth it or not. 1x3 and 3x1 though, we have some different support. Now, we have chances for items dropped in your maps to have memory strands. This is not very important. The reason for this is that memory strands on random items are basically just well-rolled rares. That you have some influence over what those well-rolled rares are, but they're basically just well-rolled rares, and this is a league where you've got the Genesis tree. The Genesis tree makes better well-rolled rares than memory strands ever will, and as a result, this is basically a dead mod. However, 15 to 25% increased chance for maps that are found in your maps to have memory influence. This is the big one. This is worth stacking a lot of in one condition. So for most people, this is a pretty dead stat. But if you are using a bunch of cartography scarabs, if you are trying to mass produce maps, especially in Trade League, then this is going to be a really strong option there. You're going to want to stack a lot of these if you're interested in doing it, and you're also probably going to want to get good rolls on them, and also to possibly combine it alongside some of the things that are found on Kamasan idols, such as final boss in each map has 1.8 to 2.4% chance to drop a Shaper Guardian map or Elder Guardian map, or all of the other similar mods that exist. So there is definitely a strategy that you could make there that combines the 2x1 idols that provide increased chances of getting boss maps with increased chances for those maps to have influence with cartography scarabs, and also other idol mods that give you more chances for maps in general, and then mass produce designer influence maps that you can then either run yourself or sell to other players. Definitely an option there, but the big one is going to be the settlers stuff. So from the underwhelming to the extremely good, let's have a look at the support for ore deposits that exists in the Legacy of Phrecia event. Firstly, there are two different choices here, and one of these is Ruthless exclusive, which actually doesn't matter because there is no option to play this event in Ruthless, and the second one is base game exclusive. The stronger one is base game exclusive, the one that has a plus in it. So your maps have plus 15 to 25% chance to contain ore deposits. That is the minor idol option. And then for suffixes, you can get more ore, which is generally not a stat you really care about much. And particularly in this event, it's going to be a stat that's much worse than you would expect. And we'll get to why that is in a sec. And then you can bias towards various directions. So the support here for Settlers of Kalguuran mechanics on minor idols, I don't think is great, except for certain strategies where you want to really heavily bias towards getting bismuth in every map, or strategies where you want to target one of the others for some specific reason. Perhaps you want to make sure that you get a Verisium in almost every map in order to chase down Svalin. In that case, your minor idols are going to be quite important, and you're going to want to have as many of these of prospecting relics as you can get. Kamisan idols are very disappointing here. These are the 2x1s and also the 1x2s. They have the same mod pool. These just have flat chance to contain ore deposits, 30 to 45%. Very forgettable. But now we get to the good ones. 1x3 and 3x1. These ones come online are yellow maps from memory. These have, firstly, your chance to contain at least 2 ore deposits. Secondly, bismuth ore deposits in your maps have a 20 to 30% chance to add an additional modifier to monsters they affect. Note that you can scale this up as high as 100% if you stack 4 of these, and 4 of them that are well rolled or 5 of them that are poorly rolled. And then you can also pick up other things for Crimson Iron, Oriulchum, which is less impressive, Petrified Amber, which is less impressive unless you go so far that your Petrified Amber deposits are completely invincible. But even then, I don't think that's really worth doing, because all Petrified Amber really gives you, once you turn it into bars, is tattoos, rune graphs, and well-rolled jewelry. And you can get all of that from better sources. Wait till we get to Conqueror Idols and you'll see what I mean there. And Verisium ore deposits can be channeled on for longer, but that's a dud as well. So the ones here that aren't duds are the doubling down on deposits and the bismuth and Crimson Iron. The reason I say Crimson Iron here is just having more corrupted growths here. This means that you end up with more monsters to fight, and Crimson Iron is done because of the additional monsters it spawns. Prefix side, 40 to 60% chance to contain ore deposits. But here we get to the really good one. You can only have 4 Conqueror Idols, and to get 4 Conqueror Idols, you need to have pretty much done your entire Atlas. Otherwise, you're going to be limited to 3. I think you need to get 115 map completion, as well as all of the Voidstone bosses and a couple of sub-Voidstone bosses in order to get every single Conqueror Idol unlocked. However, the payoff here is enormous. Firstly, you can spec ore deposits in your maps are more likely to be rarer varieties. Not very important, but it's an option. The really important thing though, 5 to 7% chance for ore deposits in your maps to be replaced by lost shipments. If you are running a fast map completion strategy, so here you're not giga juicing each map that you're in, what you're doing is you're just blitzing through maps, trying to get to the end of the map as quickly as you can, picking up everything that's from point of the interest that you find on the way, and you're running maps that are really easy layouts, like Glacier map would be really good for this, Beach map's really good for it, Strand is really good for it, Atoll's really good for it, any of those maps with a super predictable layout. If you're doing this, then you can get as much as 28% chance for each of your ore deposits to be replaced by a lost shipment. These drop a lot of well-rolled rares, not very important in the current league, but additionally they're an excellent source of tattoos and rune graphs. And in fact, they're going to replace the regular Settlers mechanics in order to farm those. And yeah, it's Editing Gog here again. They're also reasonably generous, but not extraordinarily generous with raw currency. So you'll frequently see something like a 12 stack of Chaos Orbs, or a 7 stack of Val Orbs, or a 1 stack of a Divine Orb if you're at the luckier end. Those are going to be some of the other rewards that you'll see popping out of your lost shipments occasionally, alongside mostly those well-rolled rares we were talking about. So one of the strategies that I'm thinking of, I may not go this way because I think I'm still set on playing a Herald of Agony build, in which case I'm not really that well spec'd for this, but if I don't decide to go with the Herald, or maybe I just decide to force this anyway, I might go with the 28% chance to have lost shipments in every map, then run Settlers Scarabs, and just basically be selling tattoos, all league selling tattoos. Anyways, the reason that I say the Settlers support is so good is because it's no longer the 6% chance for ore deposits in your maps to be replaced by lost shipments. You can get 28% of it, and that turns a corner with that effect. That starts making investing in getting additional Settlers events in your maps much more valuable than it would otherwise be. Shrine effect and duration modifiers on idols no longer apply to effects that grant your character shrines from other sources. So if you're running something like Blunderbore, an item that gives you permanent shrine effects, or more commonly, if you're running one of the ascendancy options that grants you shrine effects a lot, then those are no longer going to be scaled up by some of the idols. Everything related to classic breach, i.e. breaches that existed prior to 327, is not an option anymore. Deferring favors from ritual altars from your maps costing reduced tribute. This is now something that is only on Conqueror Idols. This is to prevent stacking to 100% reduced. Grinding Gear Games learnt the cost of that with patch 0.2.0 over in Path of Exile 2, where there are a lot of problems with that. They just don't want that to be available. We'll come back to this one in a sec. Recombinating idols and gambling idols in Kingsmarch no longer has a barrier of entry. It used to cost, I think, 100,000 gold in order to unlock the ability to recombinate idols or gamble idols. Now, you just get that automatically. That's because there's no more building the town in Kingsmarch. Here we have the last change, and this is a big one. Lowered the values of modifiers on idols that granted increased effect of explicit map modifiers. We do know the numbers on these now. They are not gutted, but they are nerfed substantially. So on the Conqueror idols, the modifier effect scaling that is based upon the number of explicit modifiers found on your map, this used to be 2 to 3%. This is now a fixed 2% roll. In practice, this is a nerf of 8% map modifier effect per Conqueror idol, because you would definitely go for 3%. This is one of the more common of the prefix rolls, and it was one where the difference between 2 and 3 was enormous. So this is being nerfed from 3 to 2. The mod that used to be 3 to 5% increased effective explicit modifiers on your maps per 5% map quality, this is being nerfed to 2 to 4%. Again, this is a reasonably common mod, and so this is going from 20% map mod effect down to 16% map mod effect, at least assuming an exactly 20 quality on your map. And one thing that is important to pop in here and say is that quite often you don't simultaneously have access to 20 quality maps and 8 mod maps, because the way that you generate 8 mod maps usually is through the use of cartography Scarab of Corruption, but when you generate them that way, they don't have 20 quality typically. Shaper Guardian, Elder Guardian, and Conqueror ones, they do tend to have very high quality. They'll tend to be more than 15% and less than 20% most often, but regular maps will not have very much quality usually. In fact, they'll normally be 0. However, you can, of course, go out of your way to generate maps that have 20 quality, but doing so is then going to require you to val an enormous amount of maps. So it's something that tends to result in spending a lot of extra time not playing the game if you want to chase down those maps that have simultaneously 8 explicit modifiers and 20 quality on them. These are both modest but not crushing nerfs. On 3x1 and 1x3 idols, the unconditional 8 to 12% map mod effect has been nerfed to 6 to 9%. So basically all of the sources of map mod effect have gone down by about a quarter, which is reasonably in line with the amount that it's gone down in the base game since the last time that they ran a Legacy of Phrecia event. And that is all the changes that are in these patch notes, and likely will be all of the changes and likely the last video I make until the actual league starts. I'm going to leave it there. May your Val Orbs have interesting results.